There was a door in my kitchen, but I never opened it again. Back in 2022, I moved to a quiet little town called Elmbrook. I was 21 years old, freshly dropped out of college because, well, life happened. Tuition had drained me and I just couldn't keep going. But I didn't want to crawl back home to my mom and stepdad in Chicago, so I started searching for a place I could actually afford on my own. Problem was, everything decent was way out of my budget. I had a part-time gig at a second-hand bookstore, in town, barely enough to cover rent, let alone food. One night, while scrolling through online listings, I saw an ad that caught my eye. The description was short and a little strange, but the rent was cheap. Almost too cheap. The guy renting it was named Mr. Otis. His messages were polite, but something about them felt off. Still, I didn't have many choices. He asked me to come see the place the next morning. It was a small one-room apartment behind an old repair shop. The street was quiet, like weirdly quiet. The kind of quiet where even the trees seemed like they're holding their breath. The building looked like it had been there forever. Faded brick, rusted gutters, and cracked steps leading up to the door. The paint on the windowsills was peeling, and the front light flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. Mr. Otis looked about 60. Tall, skinny, white hair that stuck out in wild directions, and these yellowish eyes that never really looked you straight in the face. His clothes were wrinkled and his hands trembled just a little when he handed me the keys. Still, he spoke gently, didn't ask many questions, and said the last tenant had left in a rush. I didn't think too hard about it. The rent was dirt cheap and I needed a roof over my head. So 2 days later, I moved in with just 2 duffel bags and a rolled-up mattress I'd bought off a college notice board. The first few days were normal. I'd go to the bookstore in the evenings, come home around 10, heat up leftovers, scroll my phone a bit, then crash. The street stayed quiet, no loud neighbors, and no one ever passed by after dark. Peaceful, I told myself. But on the 5th night, I noticed something strange. There was a door in the kitchen corner that I hadn't really paid attention to before. It looked like it led to a small closet or maybe a pantry. I didn't open it, just kind of ignored it like you ignore a stain on the ceiling and pretend it's not there. But then I started hearing things. It was small at first, soft thuds, like someone tapping wood gently with their knuckles, then creaking like weight shifting on old stairs. I told myself it was just the building settling or maybe mice in the walls. But the sounds got weirder. At 2 a.m., I'd hear slow dragging, noises like something being pulled across the floor. Not loud, just enough to make your skin crawl. One night I decided to check the door. Maybe it was just a basement. Old buildings have those, right? I walked over with my phone flashlight on, turned the handle, and pulled. The door creaked open, slowly. Cold air hit my face. Not the kind of cold that comes from outside, but the kind that feels wrong. The kind that clings to your skin like damp fog. Inside, there was a narrow staircase made of old wood, leading down into pitch black. The walls were made of rough stone and everything smelled like mold and rust. I didn't go down that night. I just stared for a while, then shut the door. But once I knew it was there, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next few nights were worse. I started waking up at 3 a.m. on the dot, not to any specific sound, just this feeling, like someone was watching me from the kitchen. I started locking the basement door at night and shoving a chair in front of it just in case. But it didn't help. One night, I woke up to find the chair moved slightly, like someone had tried to open the door from the other side. The worst part? I hadn't heard a thing. That's when I decided I had to see what was down there. I waited until morning, grabbed a flashlight, and opened the door again. The cold was still there. I stepped carefully down the stairs, trying not to breathe too loud. Dust covered everything. Cobwebs brushed my face. The air felt heavy, like it hadn't been touched in years. At the bottom, there was a small room. Mostly empty, except for the far wall. There, hanging neatly, was a giant piece of cardboard with a hand-drawn map. A map of my apartment. It showed everything. Walls, doors, the exact location of my mattress, my nightstand, the chair in the kitchen. It was drawn in black marker with such detail that I felt sick. Whoever made this had been inside. Recently. That's when I noticed the footprints in the dust. Small, barefoot prints leading from the corner of the room to the map and back. Fresh, like someone had just been there. I turned and ran up the stairs, nearly tripping over myself. Slammed the door shut and pushed the fridge in front of it this time. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every whisper of wind outside made my chest tighten. I kept staring at the door, waiting for it to open. The next morning, I didn't even pack. I just grabbed my phone, wallet, and jacket and walked straight to the coffee shop down the street. I called the non-emergency police line from there. 2 officers showed up about an hour later. I told them everything. One officer went down into the basement while the other stayed with me. 10 minutes passed, then 15. When the first officer came back up, his face looked pale. He pulled the other one aside and they talked quietly for a minute. Then they told me I couldn't stay there anymore. I needed to leave immediately. Turns out, behind a pile of old crates, they found a hole in the wall. A tunnel, small but just wide enough for someone to crawl through. It led under the building to the back lot, exactly where my apartment was. Even worse, they found a bag. Inside were personal items, an old cell phone, a cracked lipstick tube, a set of keys, a charm bracelet, and a photo of a girl with her eyes scratched out. None of it was mine. They suspected someone had been living down there, watching tenants, maybe even sneaking into the apartment when no one was home. I asked about Mr. Otis, but they said he hadn't returned their calls. When they tried to visit his listed address, no one answered the door. The place was empty. I stayed with a coworker for a while in the next town over. A few days later, I went back during the day with an officer to collect the rest of my things. The apartment felt colder, still, like the walls were holding in a breath. I never saw Mr. Otis again. I don't know what the police found afterward, but people in town said they kept going back to that building for weeks. Then one day the place was boarded up with yellow tape stretched across the door. No explanation. No news stories. Nothing. I moved far away from Elmbrook after that. Found a place in a newer apartment complex with cameras in the hallway and thick steel doors. But sometimes, even now, I wake up at 3 a.m. with the feeling that someone is standing in the kitchen. I check. Every time, and every time the room is empty. But I've learned something. Empty doesn't always mean safe. Back in 2016, I was living in a quiet little town called Brookville out in Missouri. You've probably never heard of it. Most people haven't. It's the kind of place where nothing big ever happens, and that was exactly what I needed. I had just turned 31 and gone through a messy breakup. My girlfriend and I had been together for 5 years, and when it ended, it felt like the ground under me gave way. I needed somewhere quiet to figure things out, so I packed up and moved into a small apartment over a flower shop. It was tiny, just a bed, a bathroom, and a kitchen the size of a closet. But it was cheap and it felt safe. I worked part-time at a local hardware store and spent my evenings reading or watching old movies. Life was finally slowing down, but there was one problem. I didn't have a car. Brookville wasn't a walking town. The grocery store was miles away, and the buses were almost never on time. I needed wheels, but I didn't have much money. One Night, sitting by my window, I opened Craigslist and started looking. Most of the listings were junk, broken down trucks, rusted out vans, but then I saw it. Old car. Still running. Please take care of her. There was a photo of a blue sedan with dull, faded paint, sitting in what looked like someone's front yard. It wasn't pretty, but it looked solid. I called the number. A man picked up. His voice was low, kind of slow. He said the car still worked fine and gave me directions to his place. The next evening, I drove a borrowed car over there. His house was at the edge of town, kind of hidden by trees. The car was sitting in his gravel driveway. Up close it looked even older than I expected, but the inside was surprisingly clean. It smelled like old paper, like when you open a box of forgotten books. The man handed me the keys and said, "She'll take you where you need to go. Just treat her right." I gave him the cash and drove off. At first, everything seemed fine. The heater worked. The brakes felt solid. The engine made a low hum like it had been resting for years and was finally waking up. I felt lucky. With all the stress from the movie and the breakup, just having a car made life easier. But things changed fast. A few nights later, after closing up the hardware store, I got in the car and saw the GPS screen was already on. That was weird. It wasn't something I ever used. A route had been set leading to a place labeled storage site. It was about 25 miles outside of town. I didn't think much of it and pressed the clear button. The next night, the same thing happened. Same route, same spot. I checked the GPS settings. It wasn't connected to my phone and there weren't any saved locations. But the route kept showing up. Every night. Soon, it got worse. No matter where I wanted to go, the GPS kept rerouting me to that same place. If I was heading to the grocery store, it would guide me the long way around, pushing me toward the old highway. Even going to the laundromat, it tried to send me past that stretch of road. It felt like the car was trying to take me somewhere. I finally pulled out my phone and looked up the address. The place was deep in the woods, just past the last gas station with no other buildings nearby. I didn't like it. I started avoiding the GPS altogether, but every time I turned on the car, the screen was lit up, pointing to the same spot. One weekend, I stopped at a gas station nearby. It was quiet, just me and the guy behind the counter. While paying, I asked him if he knew anything about the location. He stared at the screen, frowning. "That place," he said, "used to be a storage warehouse, shut down years ago. There was a guy, Martin I think, lived around here. Had a car just like that. Used to drive out there all the time. Then one day he just stopped showing up. He didn't say anything else and I didn't ask. But that night I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning the GPS screen was already on, even before I started the car. I unplugged the unit, but it turned on by itself. Always showing that same route. Always that same building. I started staying home more. I barely drove. But every time I looked out the window, the car was there, parked like it was waiting, watching. Then one evening, I found something strange. An envelope on my doormat. Inside was a photo. My car, parked outside my building. The picture had been taken from behind, like someone had been standing in the street watching me. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I grabbed my coat, got in the car, and started driving. I didn't need the GPS now. I'd memorized the route. The road out to the warehouse was long, cracked, with trees growing close on either side. No signs, no traffic. After about 25 miles, I saw it. The warehouse. A big gray crumbling building standing by itself like it had been forgotten. The GPS screen flickered, then turned off. I parked and sat there staring at the place. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin feel cold. I stepped out of the car. The ground was dry, covered in old tire marks. None looked fresh. A metal side door was open just a little. I didn't want to go in, but leaving without checking felt worse. Inside, the air was dusty. My footsteps echoed. In one dark corner, I saw someone. A man. He was standing perfectly still, and it was him, the guy who had sold me the car. Same face, same jacket, same blank stare. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just watched me, and then it all clicked. He had planned this. From the start, the GPS, the warehouse, the photo. It was all him. He had been watching me, maybe even before I bought the car. Panicked, turned around and ran. I jumped into the car and drove faster than I ever had. But even as I sped away, something felt off. He let me leave. Like he didn't care that I had seen him. Like that wasn't even the point. Back at home, I checked the car more carefully. That's when I saw it. A tiny black dot on the rearview mirror. A hidden camera. I tore the car apart and found more. One under the dashboard. One behind the wide back seat. Another near the radio. He had been watching me the whole time. Listening to everything I said. Recording where I went. Who I talked to. The warehouse? That was just a trick. The real trap was the car. And now, he knew I knew. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about how easy it had been for him to find me. How he'd picked me, planned everything, and watched from the shadows. The next day, I didn't just get rid of the car, I paid a mechanic to completely destroy it. Took it apart piece by piece. Every wire, every camera, gone. But even now, when I walk home and hear a car behind me, I get this tight feeling in my chest like someone's there. Like he never really left. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one. I've never really believed in ghosts or anything like that. You know, the creepy stuff people whisper about late at night. Haunted houses, spirits, weird creatures in the woods. I always thought it was just stories people told to scare each other. But something happened to me a few years ago that still gives me chills when I think about it. This was back in 2014. I was 17, just about to start my senior year of high school in a small desert town outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. My cousin Max and I were super close, more like brothers really. We did everything together. That summer, his aunt on his dad's side was having this big family get-together. And since I practically lived at Max's house, I was invited too. The night it happened, we were all hanging out at his aunt's ranch house, which was already kind of spooky. It was out on the edge of town, past the last set of streetlights with nothing but dry brush and twisted trees around it. Around 9 p.m., some of the family showed up late, and I noticed one of them, Uncle Ray, wasn't with his daughter, Casey. He said something about a mix-up and asked if we could go pick her up from a friend's house out in the hills. They said it wasn't far, maybe a couple hours away. Max had just gotten his first car, a used silver Jeep Liberty. He was dying to take it on a longer drive, and we were bored anyway. They gave us a full tank of gas and a handwritten note with the address. So we said sure. I wish we hadn't. We grabbed some energy drinks and chips, cranked up the music, and hit the road. The first part of the drive was fun. We talked, laughed, made dumb jokes about roadkill and alien sightings, classic road trip vibes. But after about an hour and a half, things started to get weird. The paved road turned into cracked asphalt. Then the cracked asphalt turned into gravel, and after a while, we were bumping down this narrow dirt path lined with dry trees that looked more dead than alive. The radio started cutting in and out until it was just fuzz. I reached over and turned it off. There were no lights, no signs, no other cars. Just miles of nothing but brush and darkness. Then we smelled it. It hit us all of a sudden like walking into a wall. This thick metallic stink like rust and blood mixed together. Max gagged and rolled down the window, but the smell was inside the car too. It was so strong, I felt it burning in my throat, like breathing in a cloud of pennies and rotten meat. My eyes watered. I don't know how to explain it better than this. It didn't smell dead, it smelled wrong. We both went silent. Not because we agreed to, but because we couldn't think of anything to say. The road just kept going, winding deeper into the woods. Every so often we saw old fence posts or half-buried animal bones on the side of the path. I started feeling cold, even though it was the middle of July. Then we saw it, a narrow wooden bridge. It looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The wood was dark and weather-worn, and there were no guardrails. We crossed it slowly, wheels creaking over each plank. As we got to the other side, the smell faded, and for a second the radio flickered back on. Just a whisper of static and a few notes of music. Then it was gone again. Finally, we pulled into a little clearing. There were 5 tiny houses, almost identical, lined up like dolls in the middle of the forest. No lights, no movement, just quiet. We found Casey standing outside one of the houses, arms crossed, looking annoyed. "Took you long enough," she said. We didn't ask her why her dad didn't come. Honestly, we just wanted to get back. She hopped in the back seat and we turned around and started driving back the way we came. At first it felt kind of normal. She joked around, picked some music on Max's phone, and we were laughing again. But then we reached that bridge. The smell came back, harder this time. Like it had been waiting for us. Casey choked and covered her nose. "What is that?" she said, her voice shaking. I glanced at Max. He looked pale. He didn't say anything, just kept his eyes on the road. And then, right as we started crossing the bridge, the Jeep stopped. No warning, no stuttering, just stopped. Max slammed the gas, but the engine just revved. The tires spun like they were floating. I looked at the dashboard. No warning lights. Everything looked fine. Then the Jeep tilted. The back lifted like something was underneath us. Casey screamed. Max was shouting, "I'm not doing this. I swear I'm not." The car rocked, and we all turned to look out the back window. But there was nothing. Just pitch black trees and the faint outline of the bridge behind us, and then we heard it. A slow dragging sound, like heavy claws scraping across wood. The Jeep dropped suddenly, slamming back onto the bridge. It jolted forward so fast Max almost lost control. We swerved and barely missed a thick oak tree, then sped down the dirt path like something was chasing us. I didn't even dare look in the mirrors. The smell didn't go away right away. It stuck to us like smoke. Even when the road turned back, to gravel, then to pavement, I could still taste it. Eventually, the radio worked again, but no one turned it on. When we got to a gas station back in town, we all jumped out of the car. Max went straight to the back of the Jeep, and his face went pale. There was a dent, not a scratch, not a bump, a deep sunken dent, like something massive had pressed in the entire back panel with a hand the size of a truck tire. It wasn't possible. We would have noticed hitting something. We didn't hit anything. For a while, no one said anything. Then Max looked at me and said, "I saw something. In the mirror. Just for a second." Casey nodded slowly. "Me too. I didn't see anything." I wanted to ask what it looked like, but something in their faces told me not to. I didn't want to know. Years passed. I moved away, started college, got busy with life, but I never stopped thinking about that night. One time, a few years later, I brought it up again when I saw Max. "You ever think about that night?" I asked. He looked at me and nodded. Sometimes, not often. Don't like to. I pushed him a little. What did you see, really? He hesitated. Then he said, it had hooves. Not like a deer. Big, black, wrong. That was all he said. And you know what? I still don't know what to make of it. I try to tell myself there's a logical explanation. Maybe the bridge was rotting. Maybe we imagined the smell. Maybe the dent came from something else, but deep down I know better. Something was out there and it let us go. Okay, let me start by saying I don't believe in ghosts. Not really, not the whole white figure floating down a hallway kind of stuff, but I do believe some things happen that we can't explain. Weird things, creepy things. And one night in 2016, something happened to me that I still think about way too often. Back then I was 17, living in a quiet town outside of Asheville, North Carolina. My best friend, Jamie, had this old Subaru his older brother handed down to him. It was beat up, smelled like old fries, and rattled when it hit potholes, but to Jamie, that car was freedom. So anyway, one summer weekend his uncle was throwing this family cookout at their cabin way out in the mountains. I tagged along like I usually did. We were all hanging out, people eating burgers, drinking sodas, kids running around barefoot. Just a regular backyard vibe. Around 9:30 p.m., Jamie's aunt and uncle finally showed up, but without their daughter, Rowan. They said she was staying with a friend in a small mountain town called Pine Hollow. But there was some miscommunication, and she was waiting to be picked up. They were too tired to make the trip, and Jamie, being newly obsessed with road trips, offered to go get her. I said I'd come too. They gave us $40 for gas, handed us a scribbled address, and off we went. It was supposed to be a quick drive, maybe 2 hours out and back. The kind of simple errand that turns into a story. And it did. Just not the kind we wanted. At first, it was chill. We rolled down the windows, blasted music, snacked on gummy worms and sunflower seeds. The moon was high and the mountain roads were quiet but peaceful. Trees lined both sides like a tunnel, and every once in a while we'd pass an old gas station or a wooden sign with paint peeling off. But the farther we drove, the stranger it got. We turned off the main highway and into a thinner, less maintained road. Trees got denser, the air felt heavier. The temperature dropped even though it was July. Jamie made a joke about how the GPS kept glitching, freezing every few minutes and then catching up all at once like it didn't want us to know where we were going. Then the radio started fading, into static. At first I thought we were just getting out of range, but then out of nowhere the inside of the car filled with a smell so awful it made my stomach twist. It was sharp like rusted metal and burnt hair. Jamie coughed and swore, rolling his window down, but it didn't help. The smell wasn't outside. It was in the car. It wasn't like anything I'd ever smelled. It made the air feel thick, like you had to push it aside just to breathe. It settled into the seats, our clothes, our skin. Jamie and I looked at each other, not laughing anymore. We drove for what felt like forever. The road kept narrowing, dirt now instead of gravel, twisting and turning through the woods. Just as we were about to ask ourselves if we were lost, we spotted a crooked wooden sign. Welcome to Pine Hollow. It didn't feel welcoming. There weren't many houses, just 5 of them, set in a tight row like someone had lined them, up on purpose. No streetlights, just the glow of our headlights bouncing off the dark wood. Rowan was already outside one of the houses, arms crossed, waiting under the porch light. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked irritated, like she'd been standing there for a while. Took you guys long enough, she said, tossing her bag into the back seat and climbing in. We didn't stick around, Jamie turned the car around and we headed back down the same weird road we came in on. Now Rowan was a couple years younger than us, maybe 15, but she fit right in. We were laughing again, making dumb jokes, and she picked a song from Jamie's playlist that we all liked. For a while it felt normal again, but then we reached that same stretch of road, the one before the bridge. The smell came back, not slowly, not like it crept in. It slammed into us, stronger this time. Like something was waiting for us to come back. Rowan gagged. "What the hell is that?" Neither of us answered. We hit the wooden bridge and then, just like that, the car stopped. No warning, no stalling, just silence. The engine was running, but we weren't moving. Jamie pressed the gas and we heard the tires spin, but it felt like we were stuck, or floating. That's when it started to lift. The back of the Subaru rose, slow and steady, like something huge was underneath, pushing us up. Jamie's eyes were wide, hands gripping the wheel. "I'm not doing this," he said, almost whispering. I turned to look out the back window, expecting to see a hill or a rock or something. But there was nothing. Just trees. A wall of black. Trees and shadows. Then Rowan screamed. Right after that, the car dropped. Slammed down so hard we bounced in our seats. The tires squealed as Jamie floored it. We swerved, nearly skidded off the road, but somehow he kept control. We didn't stop. We didn't speak. We just drove. Eventually the trees thinned, the smell faded, and we hit smooth pavement again. The radio came back on, but none of us wanted music anymore. We sat there in silence, headlights lighting up the road, hearts pounding. When we finally pulled into a gas station, we got out, still shaky. Jamie walked to the back of the car and just stood there. I joined him. There was a dent. A deep, wide dent right in the center of the trunk. It looked like something had grabbed the car and squeezed. Jamie didn't say anything at first. Then he muttered, "I think I saw it." Rowan looked at him. "Me too." I asked what they saw. Neither of them would say. Just shook their heads, eyes wide, lips tight. Later that year I brought it up again. Jamie was quieter then, more serious. I asked him what he saw that night in the mirror. He paused for a long time. Then he said, "It had hooves. Big ones. But not like a horse. Wrong. Like they didn't belong to anything natural. I haven't driven that way since. I don't think I ever will. And no, I don't know what it was. I don't know why it let us go. Maybe it was just trying to scare us, or maybe it was warning us. I still think about it sometimes. When I'm alone. When it's quiet. There's no good explanation for what happened that night. And maybe that's the scariest part.